Welcome to Behind the Veil. I'm Daphne. I will be your host and guide through the journey of weddings, faith, and marriage. Get ready to go behind the veil. The Siaws have been married for, I think, 3 years. So today they're going to take us behind the veil, looking at, their wedding planning process. They got married during COVID and just navigating married life. 3 years of marriage and all that kind of comes with 3 years of being married. Some unexpected things happening and all of that. So we'll delve into that. So hello, Elvis and Leah. Welcome.
Hey,
hello.
Daph. Thanks for having us.
How are you guys doing?
Very, very well, thank you.
Good. Right, so we're just going to jump right into it, right? So let's go back to your wedding, where it all began. And you guys got married during COVID. Tell me a little bit about how that went. What were you thinking? Did you ever think that you would get married during a pandemic?
I think it's a running joke. We sent out kind of reminders just of RSVPs around January, February time. For those of you who I'm sure are well familiar, COVID came about properly in March. And so it got to March, I believe the 20th, 21st, around that time.
What year was this?
2020.
Yep.
So it was fresh, unbeknownst to us. And we, in essence, in that March, kind of told everyone, okay, hold off, give us 2 weeks. We'll let you know what the situation is. But at no point did we think, perhaps this would move or change or be cancelled. I guess part of it was faith and part of it was just eager anticipation for marriage. And so it got to May and we sent out that kind of long-awaited message that I'm sure by that time everybody expected. And it was just, for now, the wedding's on hold. And then obviously had to work with the logistics that came with rearranging and even actually deciding on a new date, because you had the prospect of, okay, perhaps things will be better in 3 months, 6 months, 2 years. You just didn't know. And so that was a situation that we were in at the time.
I remember leaving the office in March when they said it's a lockdown. And I even left some of my stuff in the lockers because I thought, we'll be back in 2 weeks. So everyone was like, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Yeah, back in 2 weeks. Yeah, see you soon. I left the office and I didn't go back. That was it, because I moved jobs afterwards. So I think we all thought it was a temporary thing. We all thought, 2-3 weeks, it was unprecedented. And then we'll be back to normal life. So you're sitting there in March thinking, a couple of weeks. April, it's getting a bit more serious, but a couple of months. It gets to May, June, and then you know that.
When were you guys planning on getting married?
We planned for June the 12th.
Okay.
Yeah, so June was... So we were holding that hope that this pandemic thing will go. But it got to May and it became clear that this is not going to happen. And then how did we come to the decision? I think we ended up saying, okay, let's push to September and see what happens. That was also in faith. Because I remember at the time, my dad was like, you should get married next year. Just wait. Just get married next year. Because here's one, obviously typical African man and mum as well. People won't come to the wedding. You need people there. But the people they were referring to was their friends. And so he was like, wait till next year, because then people can come. Because we planned for 500 guests for our reception.
Oh, wow.
So we planned a big wedding.
Wow.
Of, that was what was done at the time. And so that was the plan. So we wanted that back. That was our intention. And then, things very quickly changed and we scaled it back to 50. Yeah.
So then what adjustments, did you guys have to make? So you went from 500 to 50 people.
I don't know how we did it.
How did you guys feel during that time? I think how did your parents take that as well?
I think before Elvis goes in, because I'll let him land with it, I think the humour in it is that if I open that spreadsheet now, I look back and I'm like, actually, either way, it's okay. Mainly because there were definitely, if you call it kind of 50 to 100, there were definitely up to 100 people that you wanted there. But beyond that, the other 400 or however many, perhaps we were always going to be okay without. And so, you can speak to that.
Yeah. You asked, how did parents take it?
Yeah.
The answer is not well.
Yeah.
But this is where, in the build up to marriage, we had to start not behaving like you're married, but you have to start making decisions together as a couple and putting your foot down and saying no to parents. Because at that point you're preparing, it's a trial. So I remember we came together and said, no, mum, dad, we've agreed collectively that we're going to get married in September. We're going to have potentially 30 guests, potentially 50 because we didn't know. And this is what we're doing. Yeah. And they may not like it, but they have to get on board because we're united front. Yeah. So yeah, that was key. But yeah, all their friends and stuff didn't come. I mean, I think my mum snuck in some people on the day. But I think overall we're glad because we saved money. We were able to focus on what was really important. And we had the little nice restaurant thing afterwards as well, which was very, very nice.
So speaking of saving, in terms of like the budget that you had for the wedding itself, for the 500 people, what was the budget? And then what did you end up spending for your 30, 50 people wedding?
I could talk
Accountant.
to that a bit more. Okay, so I like the numbers. Initially, we were looking at a kind of 22 grand wedding. That being said, the whole from the venue to videography, all of those things like the caterers, which had quite a few heated debates back and forth, but we were looking at around that 22k mark. I don't know how I still feel, but I think even having scaled it back, it came in at around 12k, kind of excluding holidays and stuff. I don't know if I'm happy with that figure given, but we definitely kind of, I don't know, I think maybe we thought we'd save more than we did. But we still, you can see between 12 and 22k, you're 10k better off. So we're grateful the same. Yeah,
for sure. And I think even in the last 4 years, 2024 now, prices have changed massively. So the things we were paying for weren't as expensive as they were going to be, or they are now. I think our venue was going to be La Royale and that was 4k. Yeah. Now, I don't think you'd get that for anywhere near that price. So I think, inflation, post-COVID weddings.
Because I was thinking, 500 people, 22k, that seems...
modest.
Yeah.
Prices were different. It was crazy. Because we were going to have the full works, live band, music, decor was included in the price of the venue. But for some reason, I mean, obviously we called in some favours. We've got a big network, church friends, which is good. But even then, it was doable. I think now prices have changed. If you wanted the same thing that we planned for, I don't think you get for 22k. Yeah.
So exactly what did you guys do for that 10k? So how did that, what was the day like? Was it 30 people, ceremony? What did you guys do after?
Yeah.
How did you guys spend that? 12.
I'll start then you fill in the gap. So we had, I think, 50 people.
Okay.
And
30 at the wedding.
Yeah, I think we had 30 plus workers. So with workers, we added the choir, the instruments. In fact, no, hopefully Boris isn't watching. The instrumentalists, the choir, the ministers' wives and stuff like that all were added in. So we got about 30 friends and family plus others. I think we even added the groomsmen and the bridesmaids to the workers number. So overall, I think we had 50.
Okay.
Had a ceremony at church and then we had a dinner.
Yeah.
So we were able to actually book a restaurant. I think it's called Has, Liverpool Street somewhere. We're able to book that. And it was, I think they said it was 2k for 50 people
minimum
to eat.
Minimum
spend. So we knew that we were going to spend 2k. So that's probably where some of the money also went from that 12 and 22. But that was good. We had a great time. And obviously you were there. And I think it was really good. I don't think we even spent up to the 2k. People didn't buy enough drinks and stuff like that. But that was the day, and I think it was beautiful.
Yeah,
I'll let you fill in the gaps.
Nothing to add, really. Yeah, nothing. So
would you recommend a small intimate wedding over a big?
I think the one thing that we always hold really closely, and it may seem trivial to some, but it was kind of like the highlight of our day, was that we had pictures and interactions with every single one of our guests. So we look back and we have an album and we can tell you exactly who was there. And we recall the kind of time spent and the kind of, particularly the restaurant, the kind of beginning to end of that. And it's definitely something that on a day, in terms of a massive reception or the likes, you wouldn't necessarily get that same sentimental factor. And it was just a blessing, really, to be able to truly take that moment in. I'm somebody like in massive rooms or even like massive kind of reception, I'd just be very overwhelmed. And so I really appreciated the scaled back nature of it. And of course, as an accountant, somebody that really enjoys numbers and to be fair, like financial responsibility and prudence, I'm grateful with the way in which we spent our money, and therefore having a scaled back wedding definitely benefited us in that respect.
Yeah. And you raised a good point there as well. We were trying to save for a wedding and also trying to buy a flat at the same time. So in the saving period, those were the two things that we were planning for. And then obviously when your wedding budget comes down, you've got more money left over to put into
something more
property.
long lasting.
So something that is sustainable, something that isn't about just the day. So that was good as well and useful.
Okay, lovely. Okay, so we've spoken about the actual wedding itself. You've said I do. The veil has been lifted, and now it's time for you to go home and begin your life and all of that. How did you find like the first couple of months being married? What was like the experience like? If you were to express it to someone.
You know what? It was amazing, but it felt very foreign because you're all of a sudden you live with this person that you've been talking on the phone to like every day for the last 2 years. But now you're together all the time. And we were working from home. It was COVID, so there was nowhere to go. So you get to know each other a lot more. There's nowhere to escape to. You go shopping together. I remember we used to have two motives: shopping, and then we'd watch football. That was all we did for about 6 months because there was nothing to do. So we'd go shopping on like a weekday evening, and then we'd come home and watch football. And then those were the only two things we could do. And then we'd have church online for a while. So there wasn't a whole lot to do. So we just got to really, really talk, get to know each other very, very well. And quite rapidly, I'd say, in that kind of greenhouse effect, if you want to call it that. So I think it was amazing. I remember times we still didn't have much furniture. Because everything takes 16 weeks to arrive, apparently. So,
and then I presume COVID also delayed things as well.
So we were just like, every month you go and buy something new and then you put it in and then you build up as you're going. So it was fun. You're building your life together and it felt nice.
What was your experience, Leah?
I think one I would say of pleasantness and surprise in that there was, and I always talk to it, like when I speak to people kind of in life or day to day, there are kind of two sides of the spectrum. Some people are like, it's the hardest year of your life. And others will say that it's very blissful. And I think we can attest to the fact that it was extremely blissful. And so it's almost just to encourage the narrative that it may be difficult for some, but it doesn't have to be the case. It's definitely a culture shock. It's adjusting to being responsible for far more than yourselves. But I'd just say it was kind of one of bliss. And it sounds so silly, but it was like in your brain you feel like you're in a dream. Like I can't really explain it, but it's like a party that hasn't stopped. So like even just like an experience of like going on holiday together, I can't explain, but it's just so nice. It's just like you just feel like this young, happy, kind of giggly. I don't know. I just remember it feeling very surreal. Like we're allowed to be here. Like,
it's what I guess it's obviously the honeymoon phase, isn't it? But I think as Christians, because we grow up with so many limitations and relationships, all good and good for us. You know, don't go on holiday together. Don't go to hotels together, all of this sort of stuff. So then when all of that is just gone, and as you say, like the veil's been lifted, you're like, oh, don't know what to do here. How do foreign. Like you're holding hands at an airport and you're like,
are we supposed to do this?
Are we supposed to like so you get a little bit, but you kind of over time you
kind of have to reprogram your mind.
So you just giggle a lot and laugh a lot. You learn about the other person a lot as well. Like little things like where they leave their slippers in proximity to the bed. I remember she used to go on to me about this a lot because I used to leave them in some funny place. So there's a lot of like you just learn some new stuff. You're like, okay, I didn't know that. How does someone, I don't know, like their tea and their coffee? You know, how do they deal with tidying up? Are they a tidy up on the spot? Wait till after kind of thing. So you learn a lot about the person. You know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
In terms of, so you guys got married, how old were you? I think it was
We're 23.
23.
Just before.
23. So how was that experience? I know that I got married at 25. I feel like I'm still a baby.
Still a baby, yeah.
How was that experience of getting married so young? How did people around you take it? Like what led you guys to also get married so young?
I'll take this one because I've always known
Yeah.
that I was going to get married young.
Okay.
I think there's a story, allegedly, at uni. I told my friends that I was going to get married at 21, allegedly.
Okay.
I don't remember this. I think I said like early 20s and they just like
And
took
then
it to
I thought
21.
Okay.
So I always know I wanted to get married young. And my rationale was I saw my parents' marriage, and often people may even think that I'm going to say that I saw an amazing marriage. I saw the opposite, which was quite strange. But seeing what that marriage was like meant that I knew for sure and for certain that I wanted something completely different.
Okay.
So it meant that I had to realize that very early on. I had to be aware of that, and I had to work out the issues that had affected me from seeing that marriage, because you can become numb to certain things.
Yeah.
Certain things are missing. So you have to work at those things. So I think first year uni, I realized that, and I just tried to deal with those things as fast as possible. And then by the time I got to second, third year, I was like, okay, I think I've dealt with most of those wounds. So now I think I'm ready to marry. And that was my rationale. But that's just kind of how I am as well. I'm very much, I want this. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Leah, did you know that you wanted to get married young?
That's a funny story. You told her.
I always make, it's not even a joke, but I always make the point that growing up, I never had an expectation for marriage.
Okay.
I never necessarily, I know that some people will say that in their head they can visualize what their wedding day will look like and things like that. But it wasn't something that I necessarily grew up really wanting. It just never crossed my mind. And so I always tell people that whilst I didn't know if I wanted to get married or even think about it, Elvis gave me that cause or that reason. And I'm not trying to be...
Cute.
I was trying to say it without sounding soft, but yeah, it kind of just is what it is. Yeah. I didn't necessarily have that desire growing up to want to get married, but you were definitely the why, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, you've answered the question. But how did everybody else around you take it?
Might have to ask you that.
Do you think that your faith had something to kind of do with also wanting to get married young? Because I know that quite a few Christians, they're just get married young, live your life.
It had everything to do with getting married young.
Yeah.
If I wasn't a Christian, I would not have got married young.
Okay.
I don't think I'd be married today. Because without Christianity, I don't know if the case for marriage is even strong in today's day and age. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
Because apart from it giving you some kind of stability, it doesn't give you long-term guaranteed stability in a setting of love and a setting of the love of Jesus and Christ, and that you don't have that. So, knowing God for myself, as I mentioned, that when I went through that second year sort of realization, that was a big part of it. Yeah. I think certain influences, certain books, certain people, certain marriages all fed in. I saw some great examples of marriage. Yeah. I'll be honest, and that really helped me and it gave me hope, because as I said, I didn't see a great example of marriage. Yes, I think faith was everything. And I think one big thing that was actually kind of scary, but it was a challenge. Yeah. Was understanding how important the role of the man is, and what you're required to be able to sacrifice for the sake of your wife or for others. Yeah. And that kind of love, that kind of sacrifice was something that I thought, okay, this is a big challenge, but I wanna take it on and try. Yeah. So yeah.
Leah, why do you think you never had or any thoughts about getting married? Because as you mentioned, young girls, you're growing up, you're like, I can't wait for this. This is how I envision my wedding and all of that. Why do you think that was not kind of a thing for you?
I think I just always felt very indifferent to it.
Okay. You didn't grow up in
I didn't grow up, and then cut into the kind of obvious fact. My parents were never married. To be fair, my grandparents were, and I still to this day admire their marriage. It has stood the test of time. But yeah, I'd never seen it, and because I hadn't grown up in it, perhaps I didn't see like you're saying, like the point. But also, I think I just wasn't always like a really girly girl anyway.
Okay.
Like that's also just hard fact.
Yeah.
We used to be like bros, so that was kind of that's the way I look at it. Kind of obviously lived experience with my own family, and then just kind of personality, I think.
Okay, lovely. Well, let's get more into the marriage side of things. You got married young, you were in this, honeymoon phase, and then 3-4 months in,
Yes.
you're hit with a pregnancy, an unexpected pregnancy. And I want to talk to that because I think sometimes, I don't know, I always say, when I see Christians get married and then within a couple of months they're pregnant, I'm like, could you guys not wait?
It's like we were desperate for children.
Could you not wait? Like, because for me personally, if I was to get pregnant now that I've gotten married like 4 months, I would just be like, no, this is not part of the plan.
It's not part of the plan.
Not part of the plan. So how did you guys, first of all, how did you guys find out that you were pregnant, and what was kind of your response to it? Because was it expected? Was it unexpected? Did you plan?
I think we have to start with you.
Why?
The pregnancy topic, you start.
Yeah.
I feel like you should start because you had very different.
The pregnancy happened to you, so you
happened to us.
you start.
I'd say like biologically, obviously there are evident symptoms at times, and so I think it was it was 3 or 4 months into marriage. The funny part is, for those of us that know us, I'm sure that many don't actually, but there was a day when myself and Elvis came to church and I was ill. And I felt like so unwell, and I hadn't felt like that in, pretty much like ever. And so the joke of it was, everyone, Elvis was so sure that I was not pregnant or whatever, because sometimes perhaps in a Christian setting or our setting anyway, it can be like the second you say that a woman is ill and she's married,
just start with the comments.
it's like, okay, she's with child.
So, you just got married, so you must be pregnant.
So that was like, Elvis kind of owned the fact that like she's
like, nah.
definitely not pregnant. Like she just feels like she has like a stomach ache or whatever. She just needs to eat. And so I ate and stuff, and then I think like 2 weeks later, I concluded that sickness correlated to something more. And so some women may kind of like surprise their husbands or like, package kind of cute thing and put it together. But me and Elvis are kind of just very...
we did everything together.
So like, he's like, okay, like, let's just do a test then. Like, we're doing it together. And, it didn't take long. Sometimes they say leave 5 minutes. Didn't take long. So you didn't even have to walk away from it. Yeah. And so I just remember having completely opposite reactions in that I have a video of him jumping up and down on my phone. I don't think he'd processed it, but it was kind of his natural response was like excitement. I won't say that mine was just like still. Sorry, I'm like waving my, flattening my hands. I was just kind of like straight face, like, oh, like, okay. I wasn't happy, I wasn't sad. And that was just my honest reaction. Yeah.
I think it was definitely unexpected.
Yeah, definitely.
As I think I've said before, that I don't like to use the word accident. Because nothing's an accident to God. But it can surprise you. Obviously God knew, I just didn't. We didn't. I was excited, I was delighted. Although, because we got married young, in our heads, it was always like, we got married young so that we have time. Because if you got married at, a later stage, maybe close to our 30s, then, biological things start coming into play. But we thought, we're 23, we got married young, therefore we have time. So it's funny because the reason for why we got married young and thought we'd have time has completely flipped. But yeah, I was delighted. And I was like, let's do this. Because again, I'm committed to her. I was like, we're doing this together, and there's no other setting and there's no better environment to raise a child than a Christian marriage. So I was like, babe, let's do this. Should have seen me jumping.
Leah, how did your emotions progress? Like, how did you get to a point where you're like, I'm now okay, I'm happy, I now know for a fact what it is that I'm feeling?
I don't remember any like clear moment. I think it's when, I think at the time I kind of didn't have a response because you're trying to process the fact that it's real. And as obviously you begin to go to hospital appointments, you begin to grow a child, I think obviously the reality sinks in. And I was definitely I was never like upset or sad, but obviously that progression to excitement definitely grew as the kind of reality of it sunk in. And of course, Elvis is one who will always lift a mood and make sure that we're kind of on the same page. So yeah, I think just talking to the fact that we were quite young, I think that was the kind of daunting fact. And that, like, even with marriage, I think we're kind of the first of our friends or immediate friends to get married. And then next, you're like the ones who are next having children. Yeah. And it was kind of, it was just a lot to, it was, like you said, like 3 months, like it's a lot to process. Yeah. And then I was still trying to, like, I was on a grad scheme and I was still trying to qualify as an accountant. And so you begin to look at all these kind of matter of fact, just life matters. But yeah, definitely, like, wouldn't change any of that process, even like the jokes of it. For anything.
Yeah, I think with time, and I think time's the only thing that heals. Yeah. Not that you're always, but time helps you to helps you to process. I think like about 6-7 months in, I was actually kind of happy. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm actually glad that, well, one, we can have a baby, because that was something that was always in the back of my mind, as to, like, you never know if you can or you can't, what you're gonna have to do, the effort and lengths you're gonna have to go to. So the fact that it happened so easily was a shock, but also a nice settling feeling that, okay, 100%. In that area we're clear. So yeah, there was some solace in that. And again, I think plus because I had a niece around me when I was at home, it helped to maybe make the baby thing less daunting, because I think she was born when I was pretty grown and I kind of was helped out. So I think that helped to not shock me as much. But yeah, also I think the pandemic wasn't something that we even necessarily spoke about. The fact that back then, this was pre-vaccine.
What kind of vaccine?
Yeah, vaccine was like in the springtime. She couldn't get the vaccine. I think we were in a decision that she's not going to get the vaccine because she was pregnant, and they kind of said at that time, again, it feels like a distant memory, but there was a genuine risk of miscarriage if you got the vaccine when you were pregnant and things like that. So it was panicky. I hadn't had the vaccine yet, and I was starting to go to the office at some points later on in the pregnancy. When you go to Asda, go to Tesco, you're panicking. Church attendance was funny, and sometimes I'd miss church because I was worried. Those kind of things, because then you're thinking about multiple things at the same time, not just a pregnancy in a normal setting, but you've got pregnancy plus COVID, plus things to factor in. So there was a lot of worry early on, but yeah, I think.
So how did you guys prepare to become parents? Because obviously this was unexpected. Even before you answer that question, was there like an age that you guys thought we'll have our first kid at?
I feel like we didn't even get time for that conversation.
We didn't even.
Even in the dating stage, like, did you not talk about, wishful thinking?
Honestly, that kids were not on the plan for the early year or two. It wasn't something that I think we had planned for.
Yeah, it's definitely something for those who have the privilege of perhaps marriage counselling, things that even just having conversations with people that are married, even Googling, just things to consider. It's something that you should have evident conversations about. I think our conversations were more... our conversations were more around, like, how many children, not the kind of when. And the irony of it is, once you're married, no matter what, like, barriers or contraception or whatever you put in place, you can still end up pregnant. So even with that knowledge in mind, I guess all the more for having the conversation and just adapting to what life does or doesn't look like, I guess. I feel like you asked an actual question then. So going back to the question that I asked, how did you guys prepare to become parents? Have you, so Leo, for example, did you have any practice before in terms of, so Elvis said he had a niece. Did you have anyone around you that you used to babysit and stuff? No, so I'm the old, like, I have come from a really small family anyway. I'm the oldest kind of grandchild, so my sister, my cousins are all younger than me. The kind of humour of it was that when Izzy was born, I was in the hospital and I changed her nappy and I was like, wow, this is the first time I've ever done this. So in terms of like practical prep, perhaps none. It was definitely like learn on the job. But in terms of, I guess, in the lead up, just kind of emotionally preparing, understanding what the weight of the task ahead is, and then financially making sure that, okay, whilst this wasn't perhaps in the plan or the short-term plan, making sure that you're doing everything before that, again, to adapt to the situation at hand, and put things in place. And genuinely, for those of us that are Christian or perhaps considering faith and things like that, just honestly and sincerely leaning on God, because what I began to understand was I actually didn't know anything. I didn't know the weight of the task ahead. I didn't know what motherhood would entail literally. And just finding peace definitely in the fact that I was about to become somebody's mum, and also just finding counsel in those around me, even if they didn't have children, definitely helped.
I think maybe 2 points, one around preparation practically, and then one around like sort of mentally and not really spiritually, but also practically. I think how I prepared myself was with the full knowledge that I'm going to have to throw my everything into this. Because like, as people will know that have had children, having a child in a 2-parent household with both parents that are fully committed is hard enough. So then when you peel back the layers and you say, okay, you know, single parent households, honestly, it marveled me how single parents even do it. It's amazing. Shout out to single mums out there. I don't know how they do it. So even with 2 people, you know it's going to be a task. So you just have to say, look, whatever happens, however we learn, whatever we learn, I'm ready to do it. You don't know what's going to happen, but as long as you're there and you're hands on, then whether it's reactive or proactive, it will kind of hit you. And then the second angle of it was again, like thanks to God that we were always okay financially. So we didn't panic from a financial perspective when that began to happen. We just kind of said, okay, let's start putting our money to, because obviously there's a lot to purchase and things like that. So that kind of built a bit of excitement as well. It was fun to go shopping, to look for a baby's cot and colour of clothes, although we didn't find out until the end. So we just bought grey and greens and stuff, which was nice. So that kind of helps you to, it's almost a nice distraction, but in a positive way.
I think just to kind of close on the matter, I was always kind of like, oh, and God forgive me, but I was like, because like your mum would propose or people would propose like, oh, your family coming to stay with you, are you going to have hands-on support? And
we were like, what?
Number one, like I've grown up in a British household. We don't like, there's no kind of subscribing to that. And so I was like, oh no, like we're here, like we're gonna handle, like we're doing this. And I think part of it was just kind of like strong will of mind, like we have to get this done, whether you like it or not. Like you have a child to care for. But I definitely like thank God so much for our parents, because in the lead up, at the time, even till this date, like we're able to live the lives that we live as parents and as kind of young people, young professionals, because of their continued sacrifice up until this date. And so, I think that's definitely not something to overlook in our case, because they've kept us.
I think that's leading nicely into my next question.
Sorry.
No, it leads nicely into my next question in terms of how you're able to balance like the many hats that you have to wear. You're both leaders in the church, deacon, deaconess. You have jobs, you're professionals. I'm sure you have like visions of things that you want to do. Having a daughter now, how are you able to, being a friend, being a daughter, being a son, how are you able to balance all of that?
I always say balance is never easy. But due to the circumstances of life, you have to find a way to manage it. Honestly, it's you have to rely on the wisdom of God to some extent and be able to say, okay, if wisdom is managing the circumstances of life and the realities of life to ensure that you achieve the best possible outcome, then it means you have to devote time to everything. You can't devote all of your time to something, but you need to be able to be there 100% for the different people in your life at various points. You can't always get everything right. You will let people down. That's a fact. I've let you down. I've let Izzy down, I'm sure. But being aware of that is a good start. Knowing that you can't keep everybody happy all the time is a good place to start. And then you have to draw some boundaries. And then you focus on getting a few things very, very right. So some things, these are my non-negotiables and these are my boundaries. So, you know, that's kind of what needs to be done. For example, I remember so when she was born in September, the year after we got married. That 31st sort of crossover service, usually we go to church. That year we had to make a decision, and it was like, okay, Izzy was very young, COVID was still around. I could have said, okay, I'm going to go to church and just leave them at home. But it's our first New Year's together as a family of 3. Yeah. So I had to say, okay, I can't go. We watched it online and we sat at home. That was the first year in my life. I've never gone to church on a New Year's in a crossover. So it's like, you will have to do things you've never done before because of a scenario that's found you that's never happened before. I've never had a child before. COVID's never happened before, so you have to manage and find a way around it. So tough decisions. People may not understand it, but you've got to make some decisions.
I think, like, even particularly in our situation, because people do look and they're like, oh, but how? In terms of managing it all, I think one thing that I kind of always solemnly look at is, like, for the first 12 months to kind of 18 months, I'd say, like, in all honesty, I was there, but I wasn't always in the room. So I'd physically be somewhere, but my head was gone. Like, I can't even, my head was gone. And I think it was just beginning to have an honest conversation with yourself about what your life looks like, what things matter the most. And the thing is, in different seasons, things shift. Imagine for a whole year, I'm at home with Izzy. So I didn't really have to prioritize career. I didn't have to worry about those things because I was just a full-time mum. And then when you kind of go back into the church setting and then the work setting and all these things come at once, it's about deciding kind of at any given time, what can you honour? And if you can't perhaps honour an obligation, what does kind of meeting in the middle look like? There were sometimes I'd be asked to do things which I was like, I genuinely at this time don't have capacity for. And it's just being able to definitely communicate that. I'm somebody that sometimes can just run and kind of disappear off the radar, but actually I've definitely learned kind of just being able to communicate your capability at any given time. And also just deciding what kind of parents you want to be. What works for us is sharing of the load. Some women will want the 100% kind of, I can do this, you go and do what you need to do. And also I respect that as well. Just kind of what does it look like in your marriage and for your family? I definitely lean on Elvis a lot and he's very present. For some, they don't necessarily deem that to be what they want. And so, just deciding what your parenting journey looks like. Where are you going to be present? How much are you going to be present? If it comes to work things and church things, what can you do and what can't you do? I mean, it will definitely look different for everybody. And I remember going through a phase where you will feel misunderstood and we felt misunderstood because, as we mentioned, so some of our friends were married but didn't have a child. Others weren't married, so didn't kind of understand the marriage dynamics, then the children dynamics. Our parents are much older, so they've had their children and times have gone, times have changed. People at work were often colleagues that maybe weren't married or didn't have kids, so they didn't understand certain things either. So everywhere you look and turn, you feel like nobody understands the sort of mixture or combination of different things you're having to manage. And even when you talk to people that are friends and they're married and they've got kids, they're maybe not Christians and leaders in church. So they'd have to manage that. So when you look around, you're like, okay, who do we talk to about this particular scenario at this particular time? And for times, it felt like there's no one understands the different pieces and elements. And of course, everyone feels like that at some point. So when you get to that point, you just have to lean on each other. And just, you get to a point where you just have to say, okay, we've got to make this decision and that decision. And we have to be strong about it. As I mentioned earlier, the two of us together, this is our decision, this is our choice, these are our boundaries, these are our limits, this is what we're going to do. If our parents don't approve, then they're going to have to manage. And then that comes to like little tips and tricks with Izzy and stuff and things that you have to do to help yourself have a life. Because I'm big on this. You have a child, your life can't end. It doesn't work like that. You have to put things in place that allow you to still have some freedom and solace. Otherwise, you will genuinely, you might lose your mind a little bit. So,
how has your faith then kind of kept you grounded, or how have you felt that you know, you're more, I don't know, spiritual, or have you gone down because you've got so much that you have to do? How are you still keeping God in the mix, even like between yourselves, and then also including your daughter and everything?
Do you want me to start this? So at first, your routines are gone. That's the time you sleep, the time you wake up, the time you eat. It is all shifted. But obviously, during the pregnancy, you're praying a lot because there's a lot to think about. But as soon as the baby's here, you just have to deal with the baby. So that was tough. First 3, 4, 5 months, tough. Yeah, you go days without opening your Bible. Facts. You're just trying to find your bearings and stay afloat. Trying to make sure you don't drop the baby. That's literally your priority for the day. Don't drop the baby for the day. Over time, we got back into like, obviously Zoom church was happening. So it was something. Because if we had to go to church, we may not have been able to make it happen. So Zoom church helped out a little bit. And you just, over time, you carve out 10 minutes here, 20 minutes here, and you have to build back up again. It's like when you haven't been to the gym for a year, you need to start somewhere slowly, again. You start small, start steady. And due to the weight of what's happening, you look to God, because you know that you probably can't manage it yourself and you need help. So you look for help anywhere you can find help. And obviously we have God, so you look to him. But it takes time to build up those disciplines again and even finding the passion again. Because as much as in that moment I understood the weight of what it's like to be a father, so it helped me actually in some way to understand, and I think I've spoken about this before in different settings, that you now kind of get a glimpse into what God has to deal with when it comes to us. Someone that needs their bum changed. They can't do anything by themselves. And then as they grow, different things come into play. But so that picture is good, it's amazing, you see it. But that doesn't mean that you relate to your father differently. It means that you have to work at it and put that into practice. So a long road, different things to factor in, and building things up again, building habits again over time is key.
I think one thing that always sticks vividly in my mind, it was the second that Izzy was born, and I was just like, God, you're so kind. It just reminded me of John 3:16, and the reason is that the second she was born, I didn't know why I loved her, but I loved her so much that I couldn't understand the even more so the sacrifice that God made in sending his son. And so that was one thing that always stuck to me, that although kind of practically day to day for those first few weeks that you were in disarray, but I just remembered that comfort of understanding all the more the love of God. Not that I can even still fully comprehend it, but I just remember going deeper in that. But in kind of all kind of seriousness and what life then looks like, again, I think one thing we perhaps didn't touch upon, although you kind of get it from the gist of the conversation, is just how much life changed. And that actually, if you kept trying to do what you'd done before you had a child in the exact same way, you would fail at most things, not everything, but most things. And I think one thing that I came to have to learn is I had to extend grace to myself, in that you have rigidness before children, and after that it's difficult to kind of lay a day and decide what happens end to end, but again, as Elvis said, reacting to a lot. And so I just remember at times it would be 1 o'clock in the morning, and actually that's what your morning devotion looks like. It doesn't look like your 7, 8. It can't. At that time you've only just got in bed or something. But I remember just kind of extending grace to myself in understanding that I am doing this, and regardless of the time that it is, I'm doing it, it's being done. And so, I think it was just being able to understand that the kind of structural nature of what I may desire may not always look so structured. And I remember being on a call, this is a separate note, but there was a call with one, kind of our church, and one of our pastor's wives just saying that, again, don't be so hard on yourself. At times, you'll be washing dishes and praying. That's a matter of fact, and even more so, pray without ceasing. So I say all of that to say it was definitely difficult for me. Those first kind of 12 months, I just felt like I was in the middle of kind of nowhere, but I definitely grew to understand that sacrifice, that love of God, and just being able to manage. One thing I wanted to add, sorry, as you were talking, just to close on this, was that I think I had to also understand that just because I've been alleviated of duties within the church setting, it wasn't that I was now on holiday. Like, it's not a free ride. Like, and it's the same with work. Like, okay, fine, you've been alleviated of these things, but all the more it's like being off of work and being on annual leave. Use the time to build yourself. And so, I'm definitely grateful for having that space to, I guess, as Elvis says, rebuild.
Yeah. We had good people around us.
Yeah.
People that were excited for us, happy with us on the same journey. The amount of people that came to visit Izzy when restrictions kind of died down, messages, calls, gifts, tokens, family and friends, that was overwhelming. And that's obviously one of the big reasons for why we have community, and we one of the big benefits of having a church like this is that people will always be there for you in those kind of moments. So that really helped. That really helped.
Lovely. So what would you say, kind of just rounding this up, what would you say parenthood has taught you? So if there's a couple of lessons that you've learned through parenthood, and then we'll look at what marriage has taught you, kind of to round things up.
Parenthood has taught me, one, you can't always have your way. I knew that, of course, we all know that. But especially when, for example, like Izzy, okay, we need to brush your teeth before we go to bed. No, I don't want to brush my teeth. You're gonna have to brush your teeth. This is not a conversation. This is not a debate. It's not negotiation. You have to eat food. She's like, no, I don't want to eat. If you don't eat, you'll be malnourished. You have to eat food. And that dynamic between me and her is what you kind of see between us and God. That picture there was one of the first things that hit me. It's like, wow, the person that's trying to do the things for you knows better than you know. Izzy doesn't want to accept that. I know that she needs to eat, but she needs to understand that, and I need to do what I need to do to get her on board with that and teach her over time. So that relationship between father, as in God to us, and then us as children is one of the biggest lessons I've learned. The second thing I've learned is that I have to be there for her and the family, partially because that wasn't my experience growing up. Certain things weren't established, set up at home. So for anyone that knows me, they know that I don't joke with my family. It's a non-negotiable. So the importance of that has stepped up massively. Those are two. One more may come to me when you start talking with. But those are my two big ones.
The one that rings in my head is patience, and it may seem like a buzzword, but actually just patience with a child, patience with the man that I've married, patience with myself, definitely being able to slow down and just be still. And when you have a child, you're starting from square one, blank slate, let's do this. And so I began to even understand that the more I give her the time of day, the more I kind of pour into her, you will definitely see the fruit in the life of that child. And so there was definitely that kind of, just being patient with learning about her, learning about her needs. And then I say all of that to kind of take on to my second point. Just, I guess parenthood taught me to be present. It's very easy, like for a while, like I said, I was there, but I wasn't there. But to actually be in a moment and play, interact, sing.
You can be in the room, but you're not present. You can be on your phone, but you're not present.
I think that's one thing that we definitely became accustomed to, that actually, if we're here, let's be here. And then the last thing, I guess, kind of bounces off of that. This is my own personal lesson. But I definitely learned that I'm married very well. And I don't say that just to big you up, but there are so many different things in marriage that will teach you different things about a different person. But there is no greater joy in my life than when I'm at home, the little one's at home, and then Elvis walks through the door. And I know people may have that dream and that image. That one I have all the time now. It's that the second that he enters the house, it's like, okay, daddy's home, and she's gone. Like, and the fact that she has a father that she can depend on so well, it's taught me more about the man that I've married. It's all right. You don't need to come back to me with that one.
I wasn't going to go. I did have one more thing I was going to add was there's pressure on parents to raise your child and do everything right. You know, don't let your child watch TV. Don't give your child this food, all that sort of stuff. One thing we have to realize very on, and again, awareness of these things takes pressure off you. You realize that you're not going to raise this child perfectly. I was listening to something and I think the person was saying that everyone damages their children in some way, shape or form. Of course, there's a degree to which damage is unacceptable damage, and there's normal damage, like you tell your child to pick up their socks every day so they get annoyed. There's different kind of things. So you can't raise your children perfectly. We're not perfect. So all you can try and do is put the best possible things in place so that at least the damage to your child is minimal. So the only thing that they may have to say when they grow up is, our mum was always kissing me on the face, or she was telling me to wash dishes. That I can take. Or that was always involved in my business too much. I don't mind that. But, you know, things like that, dad was never there. He was always working. That stuff would hurt. So, and I think this is something that maybe we don't take as seriously, maybe in our generations, like put the practices and the disciplines in place. Like read to the child before she goes to bed, pray with the child, play gospel music around your child. These things, they're simple, like put the child on their seat when they're eating food. It's little things that you can do, and again, they're personal preferences, but disciplines help to build up a child's structure and routine, and they need that. So where you can, have some clear things that you want to teach the child, and then you work from there. You work from there.
That's great. Now, to finish off, we're always seeing things online about, you know, marriages being terrible, being why do you even need to marry?
Of course.
You know, all of that stuff, all the negative press around, you know, relationships and getting married is just a piece of paper, all of those things. But I want to hear what your experience in terms of marriage is. What are some of the things that make marriage so delightful? Why would you recommend marriage?
Why would I recommend marriage? All right, cool. Stability and love in stability can't be underlined enough for me. Having somebody that is with you, people say, it's really thick and thin. The person is with you not because they even love you. I do love my wife, but I'm with her and committed to her because of my responsibility to God, first of all. So that means that I'm accountable to God for my marriage, for how I treat Leah, how I treat my wife. So it's not any human standard. Nothing can sway me to tell me that, at this point in your life, you should write off the marriage because this has happened. Nothing can happen that will make me walk away from this because I'm responsible to somebody who's greater than us, greater than I. So that is the biggest thing. Because when you understand how God loves us and does not let go of us when we do crazy things, you forgiving your wife for something she said to you is not a big deal. It's something that you take on the chin and you roll with it and you move on. So for me, that stability, that security, and you know, like as Ephesians tell us about, like loving your wife in the way that Christ loved the church. That's a big love, because what we've done to Christ, the things we do, the things we say, the lack of commitment, the unfaithfulness, everything we do to him, he's felt and he knows the pain. So I have to stand and understand what he's gone through, because otherwise I'm a hypocrite. And if I can't commit to my wife just like Christ is committed to us, then I'm not doing what he's asked me to do. So that stability, that security, and having that person. Like, I don't have to, for example, you don't have to think about long-term decisions you're making. People often go and, I don't know, maybe buy a house, and you're worried that in the back of your mind, divorce could happen, and then what you do then, and you're worried. You have to worry about, many things happening, because you know that you're together. This is us. And then the final one is, because you know, this is actually key. Because I know this is my wife forever, I have to be very, very careful with how I treat her. because there's no way out. So the things that I pour into her, how I treat her, the love I show her, the faithfulness that I express to her, all counts, because it will come back, and we'll be dealing with it together for the rest of our lives. So if I start feeding junk and I say certain things to her, I mistreat her, it's gonna come back and affect me. So it's because the person's with you forever, you're very careful with how you treat somebody. When you're in a workplace and you're planning to be there for 15 years, you don't talk to your line manager anyhow. If you're there for a year's contract, you know how you're going to treat things. You're going to leave things in a mess. But this is a lifelong investment. Yeah. So you treat it like a lifelong, not investment. It sounds like it's a token thing. But as a lifelong partner and spouse, you treat them like that, and as such, and you hold them in high esteem and value.
I think you said it all. But simply put, I think sometimes we overlook the kind of simplicity of spending my whole life with, I don't want to say best friend because everybody says that, but spending.
No, but we're actually.
Yeah, like, as for besties, we were, like I said at the beginning, like, you were my why. And so, just having that lifelong companionship with somebody that you have vowed to be with somebody that you have vowed to serve. And so there is a delight and a pleasure in that, like, for sure. People get scared at this concept of people get scared at marriage, but there is delight in those very things that we're called to do. And I had a point to close on, but I feel like my brain has completely gone. It was kind of a quote, but one thing that always stood with me, it's that ability to live kind of bettering both yourself and the other person. I have somebody that I look at and can look at me and tell me about myself, tell me the places in which I lack, and tell me the places in which I kind of overflow and do well in. And I remember in our counselling, it was one thing that stuck with me. It was Apostle Ben, and he said that, Leah, you should be better because of the man that you married, and Elvis, you should be better because of the women that you married. And I think that just so beautifully puts into kind of perspective the value that we've received from our marriage.
And we sharpen each other. You have to, in many different ways, and sometimes the sharpening and the kind of pruning isn't always nice. But it's good for your character building. It's good for your strengthening your relationship in Christ. It teaches you lessons. I learn lessons every day. Sometimes nice lessons, sometimes tough lessons. But that's why I married somebody who can challenge me, who can say, obviously did that. That was ridiculously poor. That was bad. Don't do that again. That's what I need to hear. Otherwise, how do you go and develop? Exactly. And in that union, you have the safety. I talked about security, which I think is different from safety. You have the safe place where you're exposed completely. That marriage exposes us, and you have that in your setting. So that's amazing, and you can trust that the person, despite being exposed and naked in front of, they won't take advantage of you. And that's a beautiful thing, for sure.
I love that. I've just thought about another question. This is the final one. Going back to your unexpected blessing of having a beautiful baby 3 months into your marriage. What advice would you give people, not necessarily who may have a child a couple of months coming into marriage, but who experience any challenges of any sort within the first couple of months of marriage? Like, how would you... what advice would you give them in terms of navigating that?
Hey, you flipped it to me. I think before you go into marriage, understand that anything is possible. In life, absolutely any scenario is possible. And so make the decisions. Sorry, this is kind of like a prelude, but make sure that the person that you have married, that although there may be kind of flaws with them or things that you may not always enjoy or like, one thing that I've always said is that we can argue about many things, but we will never argue about one another's character, because I know what your character stands to be and you know what my character stands to be. I think in challenges and difficulties, remember that even in the heat of a moment or the heat of a difficult decision, sometimes there are things beyond you. So it may be something's happened with the other person's family member, or something's happened with a financial decision that you've made, or you've lost, like, you could get married and lose your job. But understanding that there is still kind of beauty in your marriage always, because whether you have everything or nothing, you still have the other person. But yeah, just choosing to love and choosing to bear with, that's the simplest way I can put it. I don't have any like particular gem, but just choosing to love and choosing to bear with.
I want to touch on that choosing element. I think worldly wisdom tells us that love is a feeling, or love is, let me say, just a feeling, just an emotion. And then when you don't feel like you love the person anymore, then that's it. You can walk away. Love is not just a feeling. Love is a choice you choose to make every single day. So although challenges may come, hard times will come. Like you never know what's going to happen. Which is why when you're marrying somebody, you're not marrying the outside of the person or what they look like. You're marrying the person and the character and who they are.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and also stay connected with us on social media. Until next time, stay tuned for more glimpses behind the veil.